principles regarding beliefs of the Jehovah's Witness organization. And firstly, do you consider Jehovah God to be a loving God?
Absolutely. 1 John 4:8 says so.
And do you consider Jehovah God to be a compassionate God?
Yes, I do.
And does Jehovah God recognize the worth and dignity of all human beings?
Absolutely.
So in other words, not restricted only to those who are members of the Jehovah's Witness?
No.
And obviously that includes women and children.
Women and children as well.
Choices.
Yes, we do.
And as I understand it, your organization does recognize an individual's freedom to report crimes to the authorities.
Absolutely.
Now, as I understand it, people who no longer want to be known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but who have been, must then dissociate. Is that right?
No, not necessarily. I meet many people in my travel that perhaps were Jehovah's Witnesses at one stage, but then have decided no longer to be active, as they haven't gone through a formal process.
Well, I've chosen my words deliberately, Mr. Jackson.
Okay.
If someone no longer wants to be known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, they must then dissociate. Is that right?
Well, again, please, if they want to take the action of doing that, but of course they have total freedom if they don't want to apply to officially be removed as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They can tell anyone they want that they're no longer a Jehovah's Witness.
Well, I'll come back to that, but perhaps I can take you to tab 109, page 155. So this is the manual organized to do Jehovah's will.
Is this the section on disassociation?
Yes, that's right. So this is a manual which is issued to all baptized Jehovah's Witnesses. Is that right?
That is correct.
And this
let me clarify, to be precise, those who are approved to go from door to door. So someone who's preparing for baptism and is an unbaptized publisher would be allowed to have a copy.
Okay, I see. So all baptized Jehovah's Witnesses would be guided by this, but in addition you say some who are not yet baptized may also have a copy of this.
That is correct.
Thank you, yes. And this second edition is there?
No, there isn't one available.
Yes. All right, so affiliation applies to the action taken by a person who, although a baptized member of the congregation, deliberately repudiates his Christian standing, rejecting the congregation by his actions, or by stating that he no longer wants to be recognized as or known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So is it the case then that someone who no longer wants to be recognized as or known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses must then disassociate?
No, it doesn't say they must do anything. If you read on, you'll see there's a process. This gives the person the right to officially have an announcement made that they're no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But as I already said, if they decide they don't want to exercise that right, they don't automatically come under this provision.
People who don't exercise that right are then, in other words, they, as you described, inactive. They're still subject to the rules and discipline of the organization, aren't they?
I would have to check on that because personally that's not my field, but my understanding is if a person has made it known by their actions in the community over a period of years that they're not witnesses, we would only hold any reports in abeyance until they decided they wanted to return.
Well, Mr. Jackson, I have to say that my understanding is if someone in that position is caught transgressing one of the rules, then they would still be subject to the disciplinary procedures, including possibly disfellowshipping. Is that not right?
That is a possibility, but in all fairness to your question, I think there are circumstances that I couldn't make a definitive comment on that.
Yes. And so, for example, if they had become inactive or sought to fade without formally dissociating, and the elders came to visit and found them celebrating Christmas or a birthday, they would be found to be in transgression of the rules, would they not?
That is not my understanding, but again, as I said, it's not my field. That goes into policy with regard to those type of things, but from my personal experience, that's not the case.
Well, you say it's not your field, but you remember the governing body, which is responsible, as you've said, for the whole field, and you've been a member for 10 years, and all the committees are responsible to and accountable to the governing body.
That is correct.
So it is your field, isn't it?
Only as far as approving the basic scriptural principles. So is there a scriptural principle that you have in mind you want to ask me about, or are you talking about policies and implementation of policies? So there is a difference there.
Yeah, and the policies are all subject to the scriptural principles, aren't they?
Yes, and if you have a question on the scriptural principle, I'm very happy to try and explain it.
And for that reason, the policies have to be approved by the governing body to ensure that they are in keeping with scriptural principles.
That's correct. But the fact that the policies at times need to be changed shows that there is leeway there.
And if it's not the case, as you seem to suggest might be a possibility, although you say you don't know, if it's not the case that someone who has not actively disassociated but merely sought to fade or become inactive is not governed by the rules, then where's the line drawn between those who are subject to the rules and those who aren't?
That's a good question, and that's where judgment comes in. By judgment, I mean using a person's nous as to is someone still perceived as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the community.
Well, isn't that the point, that if someone is perceived as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the community, that's because they have not disassociated or been disfellowshipped?
Well, it has to do with what the person is telling other persons.
Well, there's no middle road, is there? I mean, you're either a member and subject to the organisation, or you're not. Isn't that the case?
Yes, but I thought you were asking me about disassociation.
Well, I am indeed. So if someone hasn't disassociated but has sought merely to become inactive or to fade, they're then still subject to the organisation's discipline and rules.
If they acknowledge being one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
And if they do the contrary, which is to say they're not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, the effect of that is disassociation.
That's if they decide to go down that course.
And if they don't actively disassociate, then they will be disfellowshipped as apostates.
No, an apostate is someone who actively goes against what the Bible teaches.
Well, if the elders come on the door to a former member to a member who's been inactive and sought to fade away, and says, well, are you still a Jehovah's Witness or not? And the person says, well, no, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. The consequence of that will be either disfellowshipping or disassociation, won't it?
No, I don't agree with that, and not from what I've seen. Can I just say this hypothetical situation, which is probably a one that could happen, two elders call at the door of someone, they're not going to come out and say, hello, I'm celebrating Christmas. It presupposes that Jehovah's Witnesses have some sort of spy network to monitor these people, which we don't. But if that person says, look, I was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but I'm no longer active. No doubt the elders will say, well, we would encourage you to return. Is there anything we can do to help you? Now, in that process of them returning, if they feel prompted to say that they have been living a lifestyle that is contrary to what Jehovah's Witnesses would live, then certainly we would handle that.
Well, let's take that hypothesis where this household Mr. Jackson, you hear me?
I can, yes. Sorry, you started, I didn't hear a question.
Yes, it was echoing back at me, but it seems to have been resolved. Mr. Jackson, let's take that hypothesis of the two elders visit the household of someone who's been inactive for some time and seek to explore whether that person will come back to the active fold and encourage them to do so, in the process of which, in visiting that household, they find that that person is, in the eyes of the Jehovah's Witness, living in sin. That person would then be subject to the discipline of the organisation, wouldn't they?
In a case such as that, yes.
And the only way to avoid that would be to disassociate.
If they didn't want to go through the process, but might I mention in your hypothetical situation, the person has indicated that they want to come back, and many people in that situation do want to come back.
No, Mr. Jackson, my hypothetical had nothing to do with anyone wanting to come back. My hypothetical is premised on the basis that someone wants to leave or not be involved, and I'm exploring the possibility which you put out there of them being able to just become inactive and not actually end up outside the organisation or not end up disassociating. Do you understand? So
I do. Sorry, I misunderstood the fact that you said that they'd indicated they wanted to come back. I'm sorry.
So the point we've got to then is that, as I understand it, is that a person who's become inactive and wishes merely to remain inactive is still subject to the organisation's rules and discipline, not so.
You want to come back, but we don't run a police state where we go and try and force people to follow our beliefs.
Well, leaving that to one side, the point is if, for example, the elders visited and found the person to be living in sin in the eyes of the Jehovah's Witnesses, then the elders would, following the process and procedures, discipline that person under the rules of the organisation, not so.
Yes, in a situation where it was found that someone who claimed to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses was living in sin, then the elders would try to ascertain, well, what needs to be done. We obviously want to help the person, so the first step would be to ascertain, do they want to come back? Are they willing to change what they're doing? And if ultimately the person is willing to talk to us, then yes, that would be involved with the judicial process.
But if they're not, then either they must disassociate or they'll be disfellowshipped.
That would be in that particular case, but I can think of many scenarios where it wouldn't be.
And it's right, isn't it, in the case of both disassociation and disfellowshipping, the remaining members of the Jehovah's Witnesses cannot associate with the disassociated or disfellowshipped person.
Yes, that's according to the Bible principles, which I'm sure you've already read.
And that it's even family members not living in the same household. Freedom from the organisation on the one hand and friends, family and social network on the other.
I thought I made it quite clear that I don't agree with that supposition.
Well,
You see, are we talking about a gross sin that's been committed or someone who just wants to leave Jehovah's Witnesses? Let me clarify. If someone no longer wants to be an active Jehovah's Witness and they're not in the community viewed as a Jehovah's Witness, we do not have a so-called spiritual police force to go and handle that.
Mr. Jackson, the reality of the situation is that a person who's been baptized a Jehovah's Witness is thereafter either in the organisation or out of it. Is that not right?
I think perhaps you've got your facts a little wrong there.
Well, I don't think that's correct, because you've accepted already, Mr. Jackson, that a person in the situation you've postulated of merely becoming inactive is still subject to the rules of the organisation.
Yes, but if I could mention, Mr. Stewart, your first proposition you put forward, that they meet someone who's celebrating Christmas. This person is not associating with other Jehovah's Witnesses, not actively trying to change other people and so on. A person such as that is not going to be handled judicially, as far as I understand. So, sorry, I have to disagree with you.
Well, no, but Mr. Jackson, you're disagreeing on the example of what they do wrong. And that's not my point. My point is they may do nothing wrong, but they're still subject to the rules of the organisation in the event that at some point they do something wrong.
I will agree with that, but I don't agree with the sweeping statement that they only have the two choices. That was the point I was disagreeing with.
Well, it's right then, isn't it? Because if they don't want to be subject to the discipline and rules of the organisation, then they have to leave by actively dissociating. Isn't that the truth?
That's if they definitely don't want to be, yes. But there are some that do not want to make that active move.
Well, the result then is they're faced with the choice between the freedom from the organisation on the one hand and having to lose their family and friends and social network on the other.
That's how you would like to put it, Mr. Stewart, but I thought I'm trying to say that there are those, some of whom I have heard of, that just fade away and they're not actively Jehovah's Witnesses.
And Mr. Jackson, you've put it that they have a choice to leave or not to leave. For someone who wants to leave, perhaps because they've suffered abuse by someone in the organisation and don't feel that it's been treated properly or adequately, it's a very difficult choice, isn't it? Because they must choose.
I agree with that.
And it can be a very cruel choice for them, not so?
I agree, it's a difficult choice.
And it can be personally devastating because they can lose their whole social network and their families.
That can be the case, yes.
Would you accept then that putting people to that choice through this system of disassociating from them, or shunning as it's sometimes referred to, is contrary to the Jehovah's Witness belief in freedom of religious choice?
No, I don't accept that. I think you're jumping to a conclusion there, but I understand that you have that opinion.
Well, on what basis do you not accept that?
Because right throughout the arrangement with Jehovah's Witnesses, people have to make choices based on their own free will. For example, to be baptized. If someone walks up to us and says, I want to get baptized, we're not going to allow them to be baptized. They have to, first of all, understand the arrangement of Christian living. Usually it takes 1 or 2 years for them to go through both the publications that we have, so that they personally can make that commitment. So that is a choice that they made. Now, we are not forcing them in any ways to remain in our organisation. But a point to remember is that the ultimate standard we believe in is the Bible, and we feel it's good for people to live by the Bible. The fact that many who have been disfellowshipped return of their own free will is an indication that they likewise still believe that it's a good lifestyle.
Mr. Jack, you were baptized at age 13, am I right?
I certainly was, yes.
And there are in fact many Jehovah's Witnesses who are baptized at an age even younger than that?
There have been some I have met that have been baptized younger.
And do you consider that at that age someone is old enough and mature enough to make a decision affecting the rest of their lives?
Yes, I do in some cases. Obviously, there are some children that wouldn't be able to make that decision. And perhaps some would have questioned whether I could make that decision at 13 years of age. But I've worked with people that have been baptized when they were 11, and they have stuck by that determination their whole life.
Well, that may be because they can't leave the organisation without leaving behind everyone whom they know.
Anything is possible.
You see, let's take someone who's baptized at a young age and then has Sly elsewhere, and they want to choose some other system of belief. They're then still going to be faced with the stark choice that we've identified, aren't they?
That's true.
So on that basis, I suggest to you that that policy and practice of the organisation is in conflict with the Jehovah's Witnesses' belief, as you said it is, in freedom of religious choice.
No, we don't see it that way, but you're entitled to your opinion.
And I suggest also that it's in conflict with the idea of a loving and a compassionate God.
Certainly, that wouldn't be in harmony with what the Bible says, because at times Jehovah disciplined his people by having them go into exile, come back. So Jehovah is someone who believes in the ultimate overall benefit of good for persons, and sometimes that includes some form of discipline.
And do you accept that putting people to that choice makes your organisation in many respects a captive organisation?
I do not accept that at all.
Is there a scriptural basis to this policy of shunning?
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity to express it. 1 Corinthians is the scripture, and no doubt you've seen it already. But 1 Corinthians, that's on page 1530.
Can you just identify?
In this, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and starting at verse 1, it speaks of a situation where there was sexual immorality in the congregation in Corinth.
So, Mr. Jackson, I'm really just asking, is there a scriptural basis, and you've identified what it is? Because my next question is can it change? In other words, is there a basis upon which you foresee that your organisation might be able to change that policy?
No.
Now, do you recognise, Mr. Jackson, and in asking this question, let me make it clear, I'm not suggesting it's peculiar to the Jehovah's Witness organisation. There are many, many organisations in this position. But do you accept that the Jehovah's Witness organisation has a problem with child abuse amongst its members?
I accept that child abuse is a problem right throughout the community, and it's something that we've had to deal with as well.
And do you accept that it's presented, I withdraw that, do you accept that the manner in which your organisation has dealt with allegations of child sexual abuse has also presented problems?
There have been changes in policies over the last 20 or 30 years where we've tried to address some of those problem areas, and by the fact that we've changed the policy would indicate that the original policies weren't perfect.
And you accept, of course, that your organisation, including people in positions of responsibility like elders, are not immune from the problem of child sexual abuse?
That appears to be the case.
And do you accept, Mr. Jackson, that many of the efforts that are being made by different people and organisations to highlight the issue of child sexual abuse and try and find solutions are genuine efforts to improve the situation?
I do accept that, and that's why I'm happy to testify.
And that such efforts are not necessarily an attack on your organisation or its system of beliefs?
We understand that too.
You described earlier in your testimony that the work of the Royal Commission is beneficial. Do you accept then that the Royal Commission's efforts are genuine and well-intentioned?
I certainly do. And that's why we came into the Royal Commission hoping that collectively something would come forward that would help us as well as everybody else.
And would you disagree then with anyone who said that the efforts to highlight and deal with child sexual abuse in the Jehovah's Witness Church is engaging in apostate lies?
I guess that's a broad question, because sometimes those who make these accusations make many other accusations as well. But let me assure you, the person making the accusation is not the main thing. The main thing is there some basis to the accusation? And if there is some way that we can improve, the governing body is always interested in seeing how we can refine our policies. You see, Mr. Stewart, could I just emphasise, as a religion, two very strong things we feel. One is we try to keep a high moral standard, and secondly, there's love among the organisation. So we want to treat victims in a loving way.
Well, just on that point, Mr. Jackson, has the governing body considered apologising to survivors of child sexual abuse at the hands of elders within the organisation?
I haven't been in any discussions with regard to that.
Is that something that you foresee might happen? In other words, that an apology at least be considered?
The governing body has apologised on other matters, so for me to say I can't speak collectively for everybody, but we have apologised on things in the past in other areas, so it is perceivable.
And has the governing body considered the introduction of a scheme of paying compensation to people within the organisation who've suffered child sexual abuse at the hands of elders?
Well, let me say there are many schemes that we've had with regard to humanitarian areas where, like flood victims and so on. I know this is not related, I'm just explaining. The governing body is happy for our organisation to spend money helping persons. How much more so someone who has been traumatised or affected in a bad way.
Those are my questions for Mr. Jackson, Your Honour.
You know, I suspect, Mr. Jackson, that the Commission is considering a redress scheme for survivors. Are you aware of that?
I did hear it mentioned, Your Honour, but I have no idea of the details.
Well, one of the suggestions is that there should be a scheme, national or otherwise, in which all of the institutions in which people were abused come together and provide for an independent decision-making process which would enable a fair distribution of compensation for those who were abused. Do you understand?
I do understand, Your Honour.
Would the Jehovah's put in a joint scheme with other institutions where people were abused?
Your Honour, the answer is we need to see the details, but the possibility of us making sure help is given to those that have been victims, certainly that is a possibility.
Well, does that mean that the Jehovah's Witnesses would not, as a matter of principle, decline to join with other institutions in a coordinated redress scheme?
Your Honour, we would need to see that nothing was scripturally against us doing that, but there are many times when we have to deal with others with regard to financial matters. So per se, it's not something that is totally out of the option pool.
I want to ask you a question about a different matter.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart raised with you the difficulty of your adherence to the biblical references that require two witnesses before an allegation can be accepted. You understand?
I do understand that.
Now, we had evidence, and indeed this will, I'm sure, be your experience, that you hear from a person who alleges that something wrong has happened, and you yourself are entirely convinced of what they're saying to you and are satisfied that it's correct. You understand?
I do understand.
And you can be in that position when there is no other witness to the event.
That is correct.
Now, what does the church do in the circumstance where the allegation may be against a father or someone who otherwise has close contact with a family, but there is only the allegation of the child, perhaps a girl, teenage girl, so the allegation can't be established? What does the church do about helping that child and or that family?
That's a very good question. First of all, the elders should let the responsible adult or the victim, if possible, know that they have a right to take this to the criminal authorities, the judicial system. But that's just a matter of notifying them of that. But because we are concerned about the actual physical welfare of someone in a situation like that, we would make sure that there are provisions made that, of course, if it's in the family, we can't take the child out of the family physically, but at least make sure that things are put into place so that this person gets the best possible care and protection.
Well, what do you put in place?
Or allow the, say it's the guardian of this victim, what they need to do. And of course, if it goes to the police, then it goes right into that whole government type arrangement whereby the government has authority to perhaps come in and separate families and so on.
But Mr. Jackson, many of these people don't want to go to the police because that involves potentially a public process, trial and so on. It's very common that people don't want to go to the police. But in the assumptions that I've put to you, the young person has acknowledged the church's obligation imposed upon them to report the misbehaviour to the church. You understand?
That's correct.
And then they find that the church won't determine the allegation to be true and act accordingly because there's only one witness, that is the young person. What does the church do to help that person or that family in those circumstances?
Well, as I mentioned, first of all, we would let them know that they should go to the police and try and, because this is beyond the parameters.
Mr. Jackson,
of the probation.
we covered that. This is a
Yes.
person, and there are
Okay.
many of them who don't want to go to the police, but they've come to your organisation because they're required to report misbehaviour. And underlying my proposition is, of course, that they would expect your organisation to help them.
Yes.
Well, what do you
Yes,
do?
and the help that is, well, can I just mention, first of all, Your Honour, our organisation, people come to our Christian meetings twice a week and they go on the preaching work, but what happens in the home is beyond the actual jurisdiction of the elders to tell the parents how they should organise the things with their children. And the point that I'd just like to make is, you see, then everyone is put on alert. Once the accusation is made, now we're aware. Could it be that the father, in an improper situation, another time is seen by the mother, and then she brings this forward? Then we have two witnesses.
Yeah, but I'm putting to you the proposition that you have one witness who you absolutely believe.
Yes.
What do you do?
Well, for the ultimate protection of that child, I could, if they feel that child and other children are in danger, I would hope that the conscience of the elders would notify the police if the parent is not willing to do that.
So you would hope that the elders would act in that way. Is there any
Yes.
Is there any instruction that they are to act in that way?
You know, Your Honour, this is not my field. I can't tell you all the sections where we've said that. That is my understanding, but if that instruction isn't given, that's perhaps something that we need to look at.
And if the girl says, no, I don't want the matter to go to the police, I don't want the prospect of a criminal trial, but please can the church help me? What do you do?
So then scriptural help would be given, but not go in and take a child away from parents.
What do you mean by
So
scripture?
spiritual,
What's the
spiritual
scriptural?
help.
What would that be?
So, well, perhaps one of the scriptural things that we could show is, the God's Love book that was referred to in this commission. I don't think you have the last couple of pages of that book for me to refer to. But there's a footnote there that talks about legal and judicial, secular action with regard to other witnesses. And there's a very clear footnote that says there, if someone does something like rape or a serious crime, this is definitely that should not stop a witness from reporting it to the authorities. So we would try to spiritually help them to become aware of their rights and the need, because maybe it's their decision, but if this affects other children, neighbours, and so on, surely they need to think a little beyond just the one person. Then the scriptural help that we would give is similar to other situations where people have experienced horrific tragedies in their lives, and their hope and trust in the Bible will give them some comfort. We found that 9/11, when the Twin Towers went down, Jehovah's Witnesses were invited actually to go in and help persons by sharing scriptures with them.
Now, if the circumstance is that the young person alleges they were abused by a member of the congregation, but not a member of their own family, and again, you as the elder are totally persuaded that the person is telling the truth, what do you do then? The assumption behind it, of course, is that the alleged abuser is a risk to others. What do you do?
That's correct, yes. So there is a process, and I think at the moment we are in the process of adjusting some of our policies, so that's why it is a good time for this Royal Commission. But definitely it becomes obvious that we need to inform some, we need to put restrictions on that person as to any type of association with minors, and if a person is genuinely innocent, they're not doing this, they should not mind the fact that they can clear their name by not being involved at all with dealing with children. Your Honour, could I just mention as a reminder, you see, Jehovah's Witnesses, because we respect the family unit, we don't have separate Sunday schools, we don't run youth camps separately, so we believe that things should be done within the family. But the spiritual help that we can give and trying to protect, avoiding contact with someone who's accused with minors is a little easier for us because we don't have those youth group separate type arrangements.
Does anyone have any questions? Ms. David.